Breaking news, Mets fans. Breaking news. It's Wardy here, and we're here to break down how Luis Severino, after denying the Mets $21.5 million qualifying offer this offseason, has now signed a 3-year, $67 million deal, right around a 22 mil average annual value per year there that we see with, yes, you guessed it, the Sacramento Athletics. Yes, you heard that correctly, everybody. Buckle up. Let's deep dive this right here, right now. Shout out to my amazing industry source who let me know this information over an hour prior to passing coming out with it publicly. I literally woke up today, and not long after I saw, hey, be on the lookout, Sevy's on the move, and I said, where? And then we found out it's going to be the A's. So here we go. He's going back in the AL, but this time not with the Yankees, but with one of the worst organizations, if not the worst organization in Major League Baseball. Let me see your initial reactions, Mets fans, in the comments down below. We're also going to shout out Luis Severino for all the greatness that he brought to the Mets in 2024, and from there, we're also going to further break down what this means for the Mets. How does this compare, contrast to Frankie Montas? That contract was next for the Mets in their rotation, everything in between. So make sure to smash that like and subscribe button as you first chime in, and let me know your initial reactions. And before we deep dive this all, folks, let's hear a quick word from our amazing sponsor here at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. If you guys haven't already, make sure you head over to betus.com.pa if you guys are interested in sports betting, because you can use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever your sports betting needs may be. And as you guys can see here, we have the Juan Soto sweepstakes here with the New York Yankees as currently the money line favorite at -120 on the odds. The Mets are right behind them at -110. We placed a bet in our live stream yesterday on the Mets there at least $25 down to hopefully come out with a $50 payout north of that should the Mets sign Soto. Then you see from there plus 500 for the Dodgers, plus 400 for the Phillies, which makes no sense to me at all considering the Phillies are not a part of the immediate group that's in the bidding war for Soto and services. The Red Sox there went from 400 to now plus 250, so the odds are more in their favor to say, hey, we like our odds of landing him. So feel free to tail this bet, everybody, at Mets at -110 if you feel biased about your Juan Soto pick. Good luck to everybody that places daily bets here with our amazing friends at BetUS. But as we hop back into this one, everybody, let's get to the report from Jeff Passan's mouth himself, which states the following. Yes, Severino on a 3-year, $67 million contract. Sevy is now entering the fold with a not Oakland A's team, but just an Athletics team that will be playing in Sacramento next season, barring changes at least. And he'll be part of that payroll that's now going to be touching north of $100 million. The A's are really laying out the checkbook, folks. They're spending big time. But all jokes aside, I know that some fans are initially reacting to this saying, Wardy, how in God's name did the Mets lose Luis Severino to the Oakland Athletics? Or should I say the Sacramento Athletics? I apologize. Great question. And the simple answer to that is there was a long belief that Severino was never locked to return to the Mets. If a starter is going to return to the Mets, Sean Manaea has felt more likely, not that he's a guarantee because I'm not going to say he is, but he's felt more likely between himself and Severino. Sevy, who's only played in New York his entire career, his long-lasting time with the Yankees, his 1-year stint with the Mets in which the Mets were really able to get the best out of him after such a god-awful 2023 season there with the New York Yankees, dealing with sleep regimen issues, dealing with not having the best with his changeup. Everything was not looking right. The Mets found-tuned his game big time. The velocity went up. It looked consistent there. The sinker for, again, soft-induced ground ball outs worked brilliantly, and we saw Severino have himself a very respectable 2024 campaign with the Mets. And the simple reason why the Mets didn't bring Severino back is they didn't want Severino at 3 years. The Mets probably didn't want Severino beyond, say, 1 to 2, which makes sense. Severino gets guaranteed 3 years there in Oakland, that we know, at over 22 mil average annual value. Now, that stands out because, one, the Mets get a compensation pick, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to double check right here. Yes, the Mets are going to be gaining a 4th-round pick for 2025 in the draft since he denied the qualifying offer, that being in Severino. So the Mets get a comp pick, which we're never going to complain about. Hopefully that 4th-round pick becomes the next best thing since sliced bread. But all jokes aside, Severino here at 22 mil average annual value, which is right around, north of $1 million or so more than what the qualifying offer gave him on a 1-year deal. He wanted that certainty on that multi-year deal, the way that the Mets weren't going to give to him. The Mets signed Frankie Montas on a 2-year deal, $34 million. That goes to right around 17 mil AAV. And there's a big difference there, right? You look at 17 mil for Frankie Montas, who still pitched in 31 starts last year. Yes, I know that was more quality than it was quantity rather than quality, even though I really do like his adjustments that he made with the Brewers down the stretch. Frankie Montas, for context, folks, in days of 5 days rest in between starts, posted around a 3.75 or 3.8 ERA last season. And days where he had 5 days rest or more, he did not perform well. So the Mets know, 4 days rest rather. So the Mets know that when it comes to a potential 6-man rotation next season, that's where Frankie would potentially make sense based on the rest we saw in his first year back from a significant shoulder injury. But you're betting on these guys and you're betting on the Mets pitching lab to get right around the same turnout or similar to what they got from Severino and Frankie Montas next season at an average annual value of right around $5 million less. And not that the Mets are penny pinching, but they need to be strategic about their spending, more so on the length of contracts and the AAV itself. As we've noted time and time again, the Mets can throw out north of $60 million plus average annual value to Juan Soto a season and still comfortably spend in their rotation. But when it comes to the rotation itself right now, Severino, Manaea, and Quintana, it was never a likelihood for all these guys to return. Severino gets a guaranteed 3-year deal in Oakland with Sacramento. I'm going to get that confused a lot because of obvious reasons. But a 182-inning season for Severino and 31 starts, right under 8K per nine, just like 2023. And the walks per nine were slightly down, a sub-3 walks per nine, a 3.91 ERA, a 3.88 expected ERA, and a 4.21 FIP. That was the season for Luis Severino, a 2.1 WAR, the best statistical season that he has had since his 2018 year there with the New York Yankees when he was pitching like a Cy Young caliber starter there in that Yanks rotation. So Severino, thank you so much for your service. I thoroughly enjoyed your time here in Queens. You had a lot of great moments for the Mets. You were absolutely nails for us in the first half of the season as well, where no one was giving us length in the rotation whatsoever. This was before Sean Manaea changed up his mechanics a bit with that arm slot, which made him look Chris Sale-esque in the second half. Prior to that, Severino was that lone certainty more often than not in the rotation to give you at least 6 and even 7 innings there at times. He was nails for the Mets at times that we saw in the second half. Post-trade deadline, he had some shaky starts, and then he really honed in. It was that more reliable starter that we'd hoped for. Even in postseason play, Severino again gave you what you were hopefully looking for. Nothing too crazy, but again, Severino did a lot for the Mets in a very short period of time. More than just holding the OMG sign like the perfect rally guy there in the clubhouse, in the dugout for the Mets, rather, throughout games, always holding the OMG sign to take photos at the end. It's going to suck not to see him, Manaea, and this entire clubhouse together again because they were such a tight-knit group. I really am going to miss that a lot about the 2024 Amazing Grimace Mets, however you want to label them. But Severino was fantastic, but I do believe that the Mets brought him back at, say, 22 mil average annual value for the next 3 years. You know, that would be a contract that honestly would go directly in hand with other guys at lesser values on shorter term deals. What you're saying, wow, you know, better organizations usually get the best out of these pitchers on shorter term, whereas having to invest big time on 3 years here, that Severino now gets with the Athletics. So why the Mets did this further is not only knowing that they weren't expecting Severino to return, but it's the confidence in David Stearns and what they have now in the free agent market. After signing Frankie Montas, there are some similarities between the two, especially when you look at the velocity. Now, these are Severino's baseball savant numbers over this past season that I'm going to highlight with each and every one of you. You guys can see right here. 90th percentile in fastball run value, 79th in fastball velo, right around 96 miles per hour. Average exit velocity, 88th percentile, 82nd percentile in barrel percentage, 75th in hard hit percentage, 72nd in ground ball percentage, but he was low in the whiff rate, the K rate, and the barrel was right around league average. Whereas in 2023, when he was coming off of a very down year with the Yankees, still with a solid workload, but a down year with the Yankees, all things considered, we saw there, again, 88th percentile in fastball velo, but that was about that. Now we look at Frankie Montas this past season, and you'll see some similarities. Again, more blue, and didn't do great there that we saw, especially on the walks per nine, was not strong for Montas this past season. Barrel percentage was down. He was getting barreled hard, but the velocity was up there in the 70th percentile, over 95 miles per hour there on average with his four-seam and that sinker that you're going to get. Now, four-seam sinker combo is eerily similar to what you're getting in Severino, where I know the Mets are going to absolutely hammer this hard with Montas now entering the reins of this rotation. The Mets are looking at Frankie Montas very similarly to Severino this past season, looking at a guy that's coming off of a down season when looking at baseline ERA, knowing that he made proper adjustments with the Milwaukee Brewers that really looked better in the second half of the season post-trade deadline for him, staying in the NL Central from the Cincinnati Reds to the Milwaukee Brewers. Now we fast forward heading into 2025 and potentially 2026. 2026, the Mets have strong confidence in their pitching lab that they can get out a similar, if not better, turnout than what Severino gave them in 2024, that what they'd get here in Frankie Montas. And I firmly believe Frankie will likely become a starter that will be right around, that north of 4 ERA, just like Severino, and no one's going to be complaining about losing Severino as we head into 2025. I've said this time and time again, but I want to reiterate it once more. The Mets need to continue to get out of being this organization that's heavily relying on other teams getting the best out of those players that we then overspend to then get mediocre performance at best at times, whereas being the team that is known for great player development and pitching development throughout their pitching lab. In order to do this, you need to make sure that you have a strong lab, which the Mets have built over the past couple years. I love what the entire dynamic that they have from Port St. Lucie up to the major league level, and then you have to look at all the other factors that come into play. The smarts that is David Stearns. People are saying, oh, the Mets got lucky with Manaea and Severino last year. You guys just don't pay attention. There was no luck. Some luck could go in hand, sure, but the in-season adjustments with Manaea goes directly in hand with what we saw guys, in Germany, Hefner and others helping out in company big time. To suggest that the Mets can't have continued success by having a similar philosophy with short-term contracts, not for their entire rotation each and every year, but for aspects of their rotation to plug holes to get around the same success that they would otherwise from a guy getting $5 to $10 million more when they're going to have around the same amount of starts, around the same amount of innings, and honestly, a lot of the same quality, how that differentiates between the two. I like this for the Mets, and what is next for them now is Walker Buehler, potentially Sean Manaea, and potentially other aspects of the free agent market. The fact that we saw Luis Severino get a higher average annual value than Yusei Kikuchi when Kikuchi was as dominant as he was in the second half last season with the Houston Astros, and without a compensation pick on him tagged, was very interesting to me why the A's were so willing to jump the gun there. But they obviously like Sevy, his rapport, his understanding in the American League, a long time with the New York Yankees. And obviously Severino, goes without saying, can be a trade pickup for any team as soon as this upcoming deadline. It's not to say that Severino will never be a New York Met again, but at least to begin 2025, he will not be the case here. Could he be traded by the deadline to the Mets or any other contending team? Sure, I'd expect that to happen probably if he has a solid first half of the season. So we'll see how Sevy does there with the Athletics, potentially playing in Sacramento for the Mets to add to the rotation next. We all know that they're infatuated and heavily focused right now on Juan Soto, but how do they allocate other areas of the rotation? Well, as we talked of reportedly on the channel as of late, they have a level of interest in Walker Buehler. They have a level of interest in Clay Holmes as a starter, which I do think makes more sense if they go to a six-man rotation. They also have interest in Mike Soroka, potentially still as a starter versus a reliever. That I don't agree with, because Soroka was fantastic in a reliever role. I know his workload makes you believe that he can still handle being a starter fine, but I do think he's ultimately going to find himself as more as that absolute best five and dive, and more as that multi-inning reliever, like potentially a Trevor Williams type that can come in and be absolutely dominant in limited sample sizes, as Soroka posted an absurd 39 strikeout percentage last season, 39% in the K percentage, which was second best among relievers in Major League Baseball, facing at least 150 batters, only trailing the 105-mile-per-hour throwing Mason Miller. I got to mute my phone here as well because I'm getting absolutely blown up right now. I'm seeing stuff on Juan Soto, so I will touch on that later today in a separate video, if not in a live stream for you guys, and be on the lookout. We will be live later this evening, barring changes, and I'll be accompanied by my good friend Jim from Ballcap Sports. Ballcap Sports, a fantastic Major League Baseball type YouTube channel covering all the latest and news, rumors, you name it. Jim is also a diehard Blue Jays fan and has followed to a T all the latest, and there's new news that has come out between the Mets and the Blue Jays and their hunt for Soto, so we're going to touch on that more later this evening, barring changes. So look out right around 7:40 p.m. Eastern time. If that doesn't happen, that's because more breaking news happened today that we had to allocate in separate live streams or individual videos. So folks, be on the lookout for it all. Severino, thank you so much for your service. Good luck there with the Sacramento Athletics, and for the Mets in their rotation, what is next? Expect Stearns to do similar things to what he did last offseason, what we already saw with Frankie Montas, and also some tricks up his sleeve. The Mets are heavily active in the trade market. They're not opposed to signing a Corbin Burnes or Max Fried, but Fried I don't see coming here, and Burnes, again, long-term contract. I could see the Mets not being interested, and then you have to give up a compensation pick. There's all the reasons to believe why that may necessarily not happen, but until we find out the results of where these players land, anything is a possibility. That is what I will leave you with, everybody. Thank you again for watching. Let me know your initial reactions down below in the comments, and this is your guy Wardy signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.